Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're calling in. My name is Ponis. I'm the VP of Engineering here at ChartMogul, and I'm really excited about today's panel, which also happens to be the last of the year. So we'll try and make it extra fun for you guys. Today, we'll be discussing about data-driven product development, and hopefully during this next 45 minutes, we'll get to touch on challenges, trade-offs, and product success metrics. So to start us off, we'd love for you guys to just introduce yourself, maybe tell us a bit about your background, and then we can move into a discussion with some Q&A. If you are watching, please feel free to add questions to the chat throughout the course of our panel, and hopefully we'll get to address them. Okay, so let's get cracking. Enzo, maybe could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much. Excited to be here. So long story short, so I'm currently the CEO of a company called June, or we say June.so because it's impossible to rank on Google with June. And we're basically a next-gen product analytics for B2B SaaS. So we do everything from account level analytics to account enrichment to integration with your CRM, so you can turn that into, whatever, money and stuff like that. And I'm a product guy. So I worked for many years in product management, different companies, different vertical. And I used to work in finance. So I really love data. I think I got a little bit biased by quantitative data just because I love to look into numbers. And it's always easier to do that than talking with people. So happy to share some of my experience today, and onward to Ellen, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Polis. Great to be here. I'm Ellen, one of the co-founders of a company called Ripe. We also do B2B SaaS like Enzo and team. So we do a customer engagement platform primarily for PLG companies that wants to do sales and marketing for their best users in their user base. So it also attaches a little bit to the product analytics side, where we aggregate up events and serve them to sales and customer success teams. My background is in software engineering. So I've been building products early stage, like 0 to 1 million ARR, very, insights driven, hypothesis driven in that. So great to hear others' experience about building products from all stages.
Great, thank you. Esteban.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Esteban Contreras. I'm the VP of Product at Fleetio. We're a SaaS business that makes it easy for fleets to manage assets like vehicles and equipment. And I lead our product management, product marketing, and product design teams at Fleetio. Super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and excited to chat.
Great, thank you guys. Really interesting. So maybe Ellen, let's start with you. Maybe would you mind sharing how you think about data-driven product development? I think many people have a concept of what this is, but I'm really interested in getting your own understanding based on your own experiences, different company stages. So yeah, let's see what you how you think of this.
Yeah. So when thinking about this topic, it's I think more or less I think about it as information that we can get from the user journey and the customer journey, and everything that starts from like the first customer interaction in like a sales call or the first user interview you do to like the clicks and the engagement of getting value out of the product itself. So yeah, I think like early on with the companies that I've been at, it's been the first data point has always been the customer interview or the customer like interaction. So it's always about like solving a product market fit problem or like a feature market fit problem kind of with the customer, and across all the engagement points. Usually when you think about it, it's like I'm also an engineer in my background, and that's like the engagement, the clicks, the stats, but like learning like the hard way, like Enzo mentioned, like that it's, it can be a part, the product analytics can be a part of the customer journey, which is important. It could be a smaller or a larger part. And for some companies, they lack, sometimes in the product development, you lack an understanding of, okay, what's the customer journey before they touch the product? And in other companies, you lack the marketing and sales department lack the data from how are people interacting with the product and where's the value generated. So I think that is like the two things to balance here, like the qualitative stuff that can also be, quantitative to some point if you do enough of the interviews and you get a good gut feeling that you then validate with some data longer down the road. But I think that's how I think about it. Like all the engagement that customers have across the life cycle or the user journey.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And honestly, when I first started thinking about this, the thing that I usually just stumble upon is there's too much data, right? Like, where do you draw the line? It's good. You want to measure, you want to get a sense of what everyone is doing, and but it's like, where do you draw the line? What's useful? What's not? And then what problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to validate some decisions? Are you trying to ideate? What is it that you're trying to do? And so how does that work for you over there at June?
Yeah, I think maybe as an introduction, I think we all have a good understanding or ideas of who our customers, what they come for, what they want, what they use, what they would want to have next. Basically, if you look at the full journey of like how they heard about us and like how they're going to stick with us over time. And I think overall data is pretty just a way to reduce the gap between our understanding of that and the reality, basically, right? And so as Ellen said, there is a lot of different type of data, and you probably want to look into different type of data for different kind of situations, different kind of problems. And to jump on what you said, there is also this concept that there is too much or that it takes time. And so oftentimes data is a trade-off. Like, do I want to look into my data? Is it an easy to access data? Is it something streamlined? Maybe something I already have? Or is it going to require me more work? And oftentimes in product development, what we see is, people asking themselves, like, should I even look into my data, or should I just quickly check it, or should I just spend hours to find this data point, right? So I'll give you 2 examples. I think if there is a information point which is critical for the destiny of a product, you may put your data team on it, and they might spend 3 months doing the best analysis in the world because your board ultimately have to make a decision, and it's going to impact the 5 years roadmap of your company. Great, a lot of the resources invested into that, but you had to do it. And sometimes it's just like a reversible product decision, right? Like, it's maybe 2 or 3 weeks to build something. You pretty think you're gonna fix it if you do it, and you already have good signals that you might be building the right thing, and it's better to just do it and not bother the data team if you have the data team. So that's roughly how I think about it, like very high level, maybe as an introduction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I guess you're kind of saying, you want to move fast. And sometimes if you spend too much time looking at the data and trying to understand what the data tells you, you might miss an opportunity. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Esteban, maybe for you, I guess Fleetio is a bit more, it's not that early stage in that sense. So I wonder how that works for you. Probably the scale is bigger, like How do you think about that?
Yeah, so Fleetio is a B2B vertical SaaS company. We're a Series C funded company. We have over 200 people. The company's been around for over a decade, so it had a very intentional approach to growing, a very conservative approach to growing, versus what at the time, maybe a decade ago, there was a very growth at all costs approach. Fleetio didn't take that approach, and you think it's something that we're glad about, and we're very intentional about the decisions that we make. And these days, we're in more of a growth mode. So the way that I think of data is in the context of what we're trying to do on the product team. You have this business, you have the customers, and the product is right at the heart of it. It's right at the center. So we're in this continuous fact-finding mission. That's how I like to think about it. Enzo mentioned decisions. Like at the end of the day, making data-informed, evidence-based decisions is just so important. Finding the numbers, the data trends that help expose what's really happening, validating and invalidating things, as Ellen alluded to. That's super important because we can better, we can't predict the future, but we can better anticipate and respond to the future. We can make better decisions at the micro level, at the macro level, and be more confident about unexpected change, which I think is something that affects companies at every size and every stage. I think one benefit that we have of being at our stage is that I have fantastic partners on the engineering side, on the data side, that we can collaborate with, and we can solve solutions so that we have that data available. And then we can also take steps from an organizational design perspective so that every team member is empowered to find data, to consume data, and also to be responsible and accountable for sharing the results of the work that they're doing, so that everything that we do is pointing towards some reality as opposed to purely opinion or ideas.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I guess it's also the story behind the data, right? And I assume, if you talked about every team member and sharing. So in a way, you want to sort of nurture a data-driven culture also for teams and people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would say that there's different purposes at different levels, right? So from my perspective, I want to make sure that the organization understands the market, our prospects, our customers, and our users, right? At a more specific level, if you're a product manager or a product marketer, maybe you want to better understand the funnel, right? Who's signing up, who's converting, who's activating, who's adopting, who's engaging, who's retaining, and then across the board, just understanding of opportunities, risks, possibilities, and knowing how all of this ultimately is impacting the customer experience and the business, right? At the end of the day, those two have to really thrive. You could have the best product on earth, you could ship really, really fast, but if those two aren't connected, the customer and the business aren't healthy and growing, then something's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another angle, maybe it's just me, I don't know, maybe Eileen also feels this, but coming from engineering, I feel like data also helps engineers understand the impact of their work, right? Because they get to build something, and then it's like, okay, now, was that a good thing? Like, how do I know anyone uses it? And like, you just wait for people to share some feedback. But then you have a dashboard, you have some data collection, and then that's, it shows how that's trending over time, and you really understand, you can go back to engineers and be like, you should be proud about this. So I think it also helps a lot with, answering the why and like, validating a good decision and things like that. So it kind of extends beyond product development, I think, or road mapping. Cool. So let's try and make it more specific about a product decision. So Eileen, maybe talk to us about the extent that you use data to make product decisions. What are the trade-offs that come? What challenges do you have with data collection? How does this whole thing impact your roadmap?
Yeah, good question. So, like you were mentioning the funnel, Esteban, and I think that was one of the mistakes that we did early, that I did early on in my career, because I was thinking about this journey and the customer engagement journey like it was linear, and like that everybody went through these steps, like 1, 2, 3, then they did this, and my job was to optimize that experience. From starting Ripe, it was more, when we learned to think about this as more of a funnel, where you have like the different volumes you have at every stage also is, an indication of how impactful your work at these parts of the funnel is. That was really, really helpful for us, because then you can really see like, the activation rate of this part of the funnel is low. And there is the bottleneck. So how do we solve for that? And then we move on to build the cool stuff, lower down the funnel. So I think that was kind of coin drop in a way, because when you start with, crafting these journeys, you think of it like, okay, a user logs in and then they do X, Y, and Z. But there is a volume dimension to it, which is really, really important to kind of analyze as well. But I think how we work with this at this point of our journey, so we're a 10 people company, and we are trying to get to product market fit. It's really like more about customer conversations. That accounts for the volume part still today, like how many customers do we speak to. And we do that through sales mostly. So sales and customer interviews is kind of like where we touch the market, and that's the first touch point that they have with us. And then we try to make that feedback loop like very quick. So we get back to the team every morning. We talk about the conversations that we've had. This would be interesting for them. This team, etc., would really have a need for this type of product or feature. Like very much thinking about the speed of those interactions that feeds back into the engineering team. So yeah, like I said, 10 people team, everybody's in the office. Like we're talking to customer, and we want that bridge between customers and engineers to be really short. So that's very hypothesis driven. Like this is an hypothesis. Can we get the data to prove that or not? And then like try to invalidate and ship fast. Just like you said, Enzo, like also think about a lot like how reversible is this decision when you take that decision. Like because there I think many things go wrong. You have something that's very reversible, very quick to test. And you kind of need to dig up data and like take your time to analyze it before making that decision. Sometimes it's just better to run with it and ship and reverse it if it's wrong. Like make that invalidation also really, really quick back to your team.
Yeah, that's a great point. Not just validation, invalidation, right? And so I wonder how that, what that's like for you. Like, is that similar to kind of what Eileen described, or is it somewhat completely different?
Yeah, there are some similarities. I think it's, I really like your approach of like the funnel and the journey, and just be super realistic about where you have the touch point and where the data flows in. I think it's something that we're doing a bit without being conscious, and I think it's a thing that a lot of startups do. But I think the way we look at it is slightly different. So for us, it's been, so we've had different topics like that, right? We have had this topic about, How do we visualize that? Is it a line or is it a loop? Where are the bottlenecks? Is it like the onboarding, the activation, and it's always the same things over and over again? One day it's the retention, one day it's the expansion, one day it's your activation again, and you have to build again your onboarding or things like that. But I think the way we think about data is broadly as like an accordion in a way, where basically we're always going back and forth between qualitative data and quantitative data. And we're always trying to use one of these signals when it's not a tiny bet or something we can just do very fast or something which is just obvious, to try to make a decision. So oftentimes the quantitative data is a starting point for us. So we look at something and we're like, this is broken. Like, that activation of, 20%, it's too low. Like, we talk with other people, we work in other companies, there's a problem, right? And so this is where we start to dive in, have a conversation with the people that didn't activate, and then try to put some color and understand why they didn't do something. And then we kind of iterate, right? Sometimes it's the other way around, right? Sometimes we look at our feedback channel. So we also collect feedback in a Slack channel so that the engineers can see them. And the same things come back again and again. And we're like, okay, something is wrong. We don't need to look into the quantitative data for that. Or maybe we don't even have the quantitative data, but we should build something. Sometimes it's none of the two, right? We just start from like the vision. We're like, okay, next quarter, we need to evolve into our vision. We need to build that, big thing that we wanted to do for a while that we know people would be very excited about. And then it's about, having a bit more data to understand if it's the right direction. So kind of get a sense if people would be excited about that. And this might not be, only the user data. It might be like also the marketing data or strategic data. Like, okay, is there anyone in this space? Is it a good move to do? Is it a growing market? Do we think it's the trend, like where the world is going to go? So I'll give a very concrete example, product-led growth. Very, very important trend in the last couple of years. So you might bet on that and we're going to be the default tool for product-led. Or you might be thinking like, okay, now this is just a fade. It's going to go away. I don't want to bet too hard on this one. And this is like not a user feedback, right? It's like really the market trend. And you want to anchor on that one, right? So for us, it's always been about this back and forth. The one thing I realized though, and I think it's important to say, is that no matter the companies I work for, including June now that I run, the qualitative feedback is something you can never skip. So even my last job was at Intercom, so 500 plus employees, very unicorn, more than $1 billion in revenue, in valuation. Sorry, you can't skip the discussion with your customers, right? So I think there is this thing with quantitative data, which is it's a very nice point to bring to the table, and I think it's one of the most interesting one. But if you don't know what's behind, it can just be a smoke screen, right? So, like at Intercom, we're like a large company. We're talking to customers all the time before doing something. Even if it was just 5 or 10 conversation, that's enough. And for June, it's been like when we have to make a trade-off between qualitative and quantitative, even though we're a product analytics company, and I should, promote the quantitative one, we're leaning on qualitative. Like we prefer to have 5 conversations and get a sense of if what we're about to build is the right thing and do it, rather than run any kind of analysis, and be like, okay, finger in the air, we think this is the way people do this or don't do this, right? So, so it's really a mistake I've done many times in my product career, is trying to hide behind numbers. But then at the end of the day, there's just humans and emotions, reasons why they do things or don't do things. And if you can uncover that, you're going to get a signal which is just extremely valuable, right? So yeah, that's broadly the way we think about data right now in product development. I don't know if that answers your question, Police.
Yeah, it does. It's great insights. And what I'm hearing mostly is, you want to build something, you go out and do it, but then you want to validate. And that could be quantitative, that could be qualitative. I had a question actually, like how do you balance the two, right? To what extent do you use qualitative and quantitative? It sounds like if I had to guess, that you probably choose depending on your scale, the stage you're at, but also the thing you're trying to build. I wonder what's that like for you, Esteban, at your scale?
Yeah, I think for us, we have to be very strong in both. We have to have a really good sense of discovery, really good sense of the behaviors that our users are going through from, like I said earlier, from sign up all the way to retaining for the long term. You want to understand what they're doing. And then you have these signals and feedback. I like to really understand the voice of the prospect, the voice of the customer. There's a competitive intel aspect there. There's surveys, there's UX research, there's market research, there's testing and experimentation. So there's multiple things that kind of connect. And I think at the end of the day is, especially as you're joining a new team, which I joined Fleetio at the beginning of this year, I really wanted to understand what the team knew and didn't know, what customers were saying versus what they weren't saying, what users do versus what they don't do. And you can continue the list, like prospects, competitors, product promises that are delivered or not delivered. So really trying to get context of all these things. And I don't know how you can do that if you over-index too much into one side or the other. And I think at our scale, we're fortunate that we are able to do both well. But it's obviously a journey for everybody. Some companies are more geared towards the numbers, and some companies are very geared towards talking to customers constantly. Because we're B2B SaaS, we have less customers, especially on the enterprise side. So we are able to talk to them. If you have a consumer business and it's a startup, it's going to be harder to talk to everybody. It might be easier to just look at the numbers and how it's going. But something as simple as going out on the street and showing an app to somebody, right, or using paper prototypes, there's many ways to get that qualitative feedback, even if you don't have the resources or the scale and the team to do bigger things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I was just thinking now, like, also here at ChartMogul, we would use data to make a decision whether you want to invest in an upgrade, right? So we have like different integrations, and then it's like, okay, let's take a look at how people are using it. What's the most popular one? And then you could basically make an informed decision and be like, okay, let's double down on this one because clearly whatever we add here is going to add value. So it's not just about validating new features. I think it also helps a lot with incremental upgrades, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to upgrades and upgrade motions, data becomes increasingly important there. If there are signals either from the qualitative or the quantitative side you want to pay attention to, but you really want to make sure that you are not building something that's 0 to 1, that's going to be something you're going to have to maintain and support for a very long time. So that there's lighter weight ways to do that, and the data is going to be key in choosing a segment or exploring an opportunity, or capturing a sense that people are interested in something as simple as a button, and experimenting a little bit on their interest and desire to do certain things, plus surveying, plus talking to them, doing customer development. All that comes together really, really helpful to decide how you're going to expand the product, especially if you're coming from a one product solution that is expanding to a second one. You really want that second one to eventually be as big as your big one, as your main one, right? You don't want to build something that becomes a lackluster, but you've spent a lot of resources on that.
Yeah. And just to follow up on this one, I think, as you said, Esteban, there is no, it's not a good practice to over-index on one or the other, but it's just a fundamental difference between the two that I don't think we underline quite enough. I just think you can get stuff with the qualitative data that you can't get with quantitative and vice versa, right? So I would say maybe the quantitative is the what and the qualitative is the why. Mm-hmm. So you can look as much as you want into your data. If you don't talk to someone, you're never going to be sure why exactly they're doing or not doing the thing you expect them to do. And then when you build something, honestly, the quantitative data is, in my opinion, the beautiful part, which is you're going to know if what people told you is real or not, or you're going to know if the problem they talked about that you solve in a unique way, hopefully, resonates, right? And there is only the quantitative data for that. So at this point, it's like the reality check, like, okay, are they doing the things they said they would do? Or I think, Esteban, you mentioned maybe a fake door initiative where you put some stuff that people should interact with, and then you figure out if there is some interest. Sometimes it's very different, the interest in your fake door versus the interest in buying or using the things when you actually build it. And people are very surprised, it's not just, So that's, both of them have like all different truth. And that's why we talk about the two of them today, and we didn't like pick one, I guess. And no one really wants to pick one here, is because they just bring you so much different stuff, And as maybe one last word is, as a founder. So one last word. I don't know if you feel alien about this one, but as a founder, not looking into data really freaks me out. I think I realized that, when I was on the PM side, I was like, okay, we need to make a decision. It would be nice to look into data. And I was looking for data, and I was trying to justify my decisions. But now that I'm a founder, I'm scared that we don't look into data. I'm like, if we take many bets and none of them have a reason and none of them work, like my company is going to die basically, right? So, I don't know if you should over-index on one or the other, but in my opinion, you should most of the time look into at least one of the two.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And we have a question from Sean that I want to ask you, but first, I think this is a really interesting point. So I'm going to ask you, what if the two are diverging? What if you are looking at quantitative and qualitative, but they tell you an opposite story? Like, what do you do there? What do you choose?
So the example that Enzo gave, like, when you're early on and you're doing your customer interviews or your sales or your user interviews, what people tell you is a problem or is like a need might not actually be that in reality. And this is why, like, things like introducing a bit of friction for them, like a payment, or like looking at their data afterwards, like, did they actually use this the way they told me they were using it? Like that is really, really important. So and I think that's like the why, like you said it. So like I just before this call I was thinking about it, like, can you think of your like product as a store or like an office, perhaps, since we're doing B2B SaaS? So it's like work being done within some kind of, territory or some kind of, area or a building. That's like the people walking around in there doing things and working on things. That's the data. Like, and if you look at the qualitative data, that's where, like, looking at them when they're walking around there or talking to them, like, what do you want today? Or like, how can I help you? Or assisting them. And then, the quantitative data is more like, see, like going in there in the night when everybody's out, seeing where have they gone, have they, who had the coffee today? Like, how many liters of coffee did people have in my office? It's very abstracted, and so it's very like far away from reality in order to understand, like, oh, the coffee was ending today, we need to get more for tomorrow. So I don't know, like, thinking about that balance, like, the reality that's happening, and then the quantitative as like an abstraction of that reality happening, people trying to get work done or trying to get tasks solved or helping them to do.
Yeah. It made me think of a few examples of things that I've experienced where, for example, you build a feature, but maybe you didn't build it very well, and the data just shows you that it went terribly wrong. And then a company and a team could spend years never working on that again. Like, oh no, that didn't work, so we will not do it. The data showed it, and everybody shows you the report, but maybe it was the wrong solution to a real problem that customers really cared about, right? So I think that's where you have to do both, and balance them well, or else you can create these myths that are data informed, but it's not the full picture. You could also be misled very easily. If you look at your data, you might find that most customers who are retaining, they're spending time on your knowledge base, on your support section, right? Does that mean you go spend, you build the most amazing team that just builds an amazing knowledge base and you're just supporting them all day long? Probably not. It means that it's valuable and that people are going there. But sometimes wherever you're getting the most numbers, there's more nuance to decisions than simply looking at where the numbers go bigger.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a lot of iteration between the two, right? So you talk to people, you pitch the thing, then you look at the numbers. It's like, what's happening? You guys are not using it, and I pitch the thing, and you go and talk to the people again, and it's like, maybe I pitched it wrong, maybe I didn't get this right. So I feel like it's just a cycle that keeps iterating and ends up adding things to your roadmap, right? Fascinating.
I think the one way we've seen people escaping that maze of data being a validation or not of the problems you solve is just going back to the root of the problem. Like, if you feel the solution you built solve the problem, and there is no engagement, then you solve the problem, right? So you can iterate and have a better solution, but the problem is solved. So you could iterate or not, and it's like it can be a very long debate. But if you just go back to the first principles, which is, we're building a product to solve people's problems, and the problem was solved, then the odds that it's something else are, I would say, much lower, maybe. And that's why I've seen like many companies move on, right, and just trying to like making their mind on the role of data, So I think that's something we do, maybe as an example, and something that helps just make our mind in this kind of situation, because you can read data in many different ways. One thing we haven't talked about, but many of us touch on, is just the segmentation. Oftentimes the average of the data is the mean is like your enemy. You need to segment data to reveal its purpose. So like a very obvious way of segmenting your data is like audiences, this type of customers or prospect or this type, and you might see very different things, and it's the same, and they will tell you very different things, right? So maybe you release a feature, it's not very popular, but you have like, I don't know, 5% retention on it, let's say. 5% retention looks bad, right? On average, you're like, or 5% of your users use it, you're like, nah, that wasn't a success. But it's 1 out of 25%, right? So if you zoom in, is it like 100% of a specific audience that you have? And if that audience, let's say it's your most successful audience with the product, or the audience that spends the most money and so on, maybe that 5% is pretty good. Maybe you should iterate here, So there's just, always this need to zoom and break data down and see how you should read it, because sometimes it's very misleading.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Great. All right, let's pivot really quickly. We have a question from Sean that I really like here. Sean's saying, I was hoping to learn some specific examples of case studies where data was used to guide development and the results that came from it. So if any of you guys is willing to pick an example and take us through it really quickly, I would love that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this before our conversation. Like, is there quantitative data? Esteban, I'm curious to hear your perspective. Have you ever seen that, like, product analytics data, like the real stuff, the clicks and the engagement part? Have you seen that has guided you in, like, building a feature? Like, not only validating it, just like, has helped me to get the insights I need to, like, build it.
To basically almost like the data driving the ideation of a feature. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think in context, I mentioned earlier the things that people are doing and they're not doing. You build something and they don't show up. They don't use it as you expect them to. But then you see a trend somewhere else, and I think the acceleration and the interest for something, people going to a certain area that you build and they're gravitating, they're coming in droves, but then they're not doing anything, So I think that points to maybe there is an interest in a problem, but you haven't solved it. And so I like to pay attention to what they don't do. Just as what they are doing. But I would say really our product team is constantly making decisions based on the analytics and what people are behaving, the sort of preferences that they're taking on, from choosing a specific area in the product to deciding to add depth to integrations, to adding new integrations, investing in our mobile phone, looking at things like languages, right? That's another one where, if you look at how many people are using a language that doesn't exist in your software, but they're using it, you could realize that a large population of your user base speaks a certain language. And so that's not a click, that's using a certain word. And then you look at all your customer base and maybe they each have one user that uses a single language. That may spark the idea to go expand into new languages, or even localizing, expanding into new regions. So I'd say that is one example that I've seen before. With languages that you didn't expect. It wasn't part of the roadmap. We weren't planning on it. We had no interest or desire in it. But then you look at the data and you look at how people are behaving in the product. And if you're able to pay attention, have enough systems in place to surface that is an insight. Our customers use different languages and we don't serve them anything in those languages. That is an idea that's not about validating a test. That is something that got surfaced because it's just a fact. And luckily we have the systems in place to identify it.
Great stuff. Honestly, I have more questions than I would love to go through, but we're getting at time. So with that said, I really want to take the time to thank you for the discussion. I hope this was useful to people watching. Thank you for the insights, your thoughts, your experiences. For the people watching, look out for a blog version of this recording. There's going to be a summary and a link to the actual panel. The next panel is coming in January, and I believe it's going to be about SaaS pricing, so that's going to be a good one. That said, thanks again, and I wish you all a great rest of your week. Thanks, guys, for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Everybody.
Bye.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye.